Boy, it shouldn't be this hard. All right. I'm ready to go.
Great. So this meeting is being conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Brown Act to facilitate teleconferencing and to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmissions at public meetings. Ordinarily, the Brown Act sets strict rules for teleconferencing. AB 361 suspends some of those rules during a state of emergency where state and local health officials have recommended social distancing. The Brown Act continues to require that we notice meetings in advance and allow the public to participate. The Community Action Committee has met all the applicable notice requirements, and the public is welcome to participate in this meeting. If you wish to be recognized during public comment, please fill out a public comment speaker form found at ebce.org/meetings and use the raise hand feature in Zoom. You'll be recognized for 2 minutes. Comments can also be submitted online at ebce.org/meetings.
Thank you, Adrian, and everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the East Bay Community Energy Community Advisory Committee meeting held on June 13th, 2022. Will you please call roll?
Great, thank you. Member Landry.
Here.
Member Frank.
Here.
Member Lou.
Yes, here.
Member Swaminathan.
Here.
Member Taria. Excuse me. Member Lachman.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. Member Taria. No. Member Pacheco.
Here.
Member Sutter.
Present.
Member Hernandez.
Present.
Member Lutz.
I'm here.
I have Member Kaur is serving as an alternate for Vice Chair Mutzenberg.
Present.
Thank you. And Chair Eldridge.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We will go now into public comment, and I do want to remind folks that public comment is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any EBCE related matters that are not otherwise on this meeting agenda. Public comments on matters listed on the agenda shall be heard at the time the matter is called. As with all public comment, members of the public who wish to address the committee are customarily limited to 3 minutes per speaker and must complete the electronic speaker slip. If you are in the meeting and you want to make a comment, please just raise your hand, even if you haven't submitted the speaker slip yet. Have we received any public comments?
Yes, we have. We received a public comment request from Irma Seabrook. Irma Seabrook, your hand is not raised, but I'd like to recognize you for 3 minutes.
Irma, can you raise your hand? I do not see. Irma, was a statement submitted?
So a statement was not submitted.
Oh, hi. There you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go for it. Can you please start the timer? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Irma Seabrook, Director of Respiratory Care Services, Ucsf, Benioff Hospital, Oakland. I support a team of respiratory care practitioners whose primary focus is to promote lung health. I've been in this field for over 25 years, and what has inspired me to choose this career is that my mom passed away at the age of 46 due to an underlying respiratory condition. Her death, unfortunately, was preventable. So I come from a place where patient advocacy matters. As most of you are aware, Children's Oakland has been a vital member of this community, providing care to all patients regardless of their ability to pay. This is a mission vision that resonates through our being, and we take pride in knowing that the exceptional care we deliver every day is making an impactful difference in the lives of our patients and families. I would also like to pause to acknowledge EBCE and the work you are doing to make a positive difference in the community. As we are both committed to building a healthier climate for generations to come, I would also like to convey my unwavering support of EBCE's proposed investment in the asthma program at UCSF Benioff Children's Oakland. With this partnership, we can build an asthma center of excellence, meeting the patients and families where they are, and tailor a robust, individualized plan to support them better. We will be able to expand our asthma education outreach, which is a critical piece to this puzzle, extend access to after hours, on-call asthma physicians and other healthcare providers. Kids should not have to miss school time for specialty clinic visits. Most importantly, perform community engaged research to better understand drivers of asthma in our community and pursue new and better treatments. Currently, asthma cannot be cured, but it can be managed. We must find innovative ways to close the disparity gap with the healthcare community, and I strongly believe this partnership will do just that. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak with you regarding this important endeavor.
Thank you.
Thank you. If other folks are looking to make comments on this item, it will be heard during our budget. Irma, thank you so much for reaching out and for speaking and for sharing your personal story.
Great. With Board Chair Diane Martinez, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Hi there, everyone. I am just joining tonight because I understand that that we have some folks terming out, and I just wanted to put on the record. I just wanted to thank you for your service, especially Mary Sutter. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and having your leadership at the EBCE team. So I also expressed these comments in a card. I hope you received it. And thank you for everything that you do for your community. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Tom Kelly. Tom Kelly, recognized for 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to make a couple of comments about the value of public participation in not only the CAC, but in EBCE overall. And I have to say that from my experience, and I'm someone who's actually been involved with this much longer than anybody else on this committee, or frankly, just about everybody at EBCE, that public participation is really valued. And it comes really as no surprise to me that you don't really have very many members of the public actually weighing in on some of these important issues. To just a quick response to Ms. Seabrook is that I'm actually surprised that Bennyhop Children's Hospital is that engaged in this process, because it's really just a proposal on behalf of EBCE. And the irony here to me is that EBCE, by producing 300,000 metric tons of CO2, which is responsible in part for the formation of the gases that cause and provoke asthma, would actually be thinking about investing $15 million in a program to actually deal with it. Look, we know what causes asthma. We have a lot of people working on this. Children's Hospital in San Francisco already has a center for this. Let's put EBCE's money into reducing greenhouse gas emissions so that children and adults and everybody else who live near these power plants are less likely to be affected by have difficulties with respiratory ailments. So just to the point about public participation, I kind of think that EBCE thinks that the public is really happy with everything just because, they don't say anything. And from my perspective, the reason that people aren't participating is, first, it's a pretty complicated topic, but also because the public, their participation isn't really honored. And we'll see that in a later item coming up, where EBCE is talking about how to deal with the upcoming budget. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Vaughn, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm assuming you can hear me.
Yes.
My issue is that I believe the EBC should start looking at how microgrids would fit into the business model and all that type of thing, and start educating people on them. The model of generating a large amount of electricity through a power plant someplace and transmitting it thousands of miles is really kind of stupid, but it's dependent upon the way things were done a couple hundred years ago. The climate action plan for Livermore includes an idea to start figuring out how to do microgrids in Livermore or the Tri-Valley. There's a bunch of scientists at Lawrence Livermore that have been working on this stuff for years and are actually the authorities on it. The model, should be that every house should be its own grid. In fact, there's a battery company that just started. Its name's Lithion, and they call their battery Home Grid 1.0 and Home Grid 2.0. That's where the business is going. PG&E's trying to fight it. They want to be the center of the world, and instead of having nuclear power plants, I guess have power, solar power plants, but transmitting energy from Bakersfield to San Francisco is kind of silly. Except that San Francisco is a small city, but most of the suburbs aren't that way. My roof can supply more than power than I can possibly use, even when I electrify the full house. I can even buy a machine that creates water out of air and use that and not run out of water either. So the way has to go to, in the future, especially with the new batteries coming, we need to develop resilient, undependent on some foreign whatever type of thing that will cut off our power. And the best way to create the future is, or best way to meet the future is to create it. And sticking around trying to buy power from all over the state or the country to bring it here is the old-fashioned way of doing things. And I think we need to move to the future, or the future will move and we won't be there. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last comment for public comment. Although I do see Member Landry, you have your hand raised.
That's an error.
Okay, great.
That's an error. I'm sorry.
Actually, we do have one more. We do have one more person signed up for public comment. Jessica Tovar. Jessica Tovar, I recognize you for 3 minutes.
Hi, Jessica Tovar. I work with the local Clean Energy Alliance and also coordinator of the East Bay Clean Power Alliance. But I wanted to share, if folks don't know the work that I've done, I am a longtime environmental justice organizer. I also come from an environmental justice community. I have worked directly with people whose health has been compromised based on dirty corporation operations in their communities. Not only are we literally kept sick throughout our lives and eventually die of these environmental health impacts, but our communities don't benefit from the economics of these corporations with these dirty operations in our communities. What the environmental justice community is trying to do is transform its community into a hub of clean energy solutions. That is our generation's work right now. That is what we're advocating for. That is where we need to move if we want to undo all the harm that dirty corporations have done in our communities. They've benefited off of the lives of the poorest people, people of color, indigenous people, my community as well. I live with a chronic illness as a result of that. And I do not stop doing what I'm doing, even if I feel sick. This work is about survival, and we need to pay attention to that. Another dynamic I see from dirty corporations is they drive a wedge between communities and use people of color against each other. And I am tired of seeing that. Clean power to the people.
Thank you. There's no more public comment.
You shared, especially your personal passions. And I just want you to know that we hear you. The next, and thank you for being here and sharing with us. It's really important. As Tom was saying, that this is not always the most accessible topic to folks. They don't always understand how important this is and how many different ways it affects their lives. And so you being here and speaking really, it's really important, and please do keep coming back. I'm gonna move to the next item. I'm seeking approval, a motion for approval of minutes from the May 16th, 2022 meeting. Okay,
Can I get a
Mary?
clarifying comment on it?
Sure.
At
We
page
can
5, if I may, Chair, I think the link, the $50 million grant to Bennyhop Children's Hospital, I didn't know if that meant the committee discussed at length the $50 million, so it might be just a typo. I just saw that when I was reading the minutes of version 2.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Thank you.
Mary?
I just have a really small item under item C6, where it talks about who supported and abstained and was excused from the measure. Ernie's in there twice. So
great, thank you.
Pacheco should come out because I think he was gone.
Okay.
Jim?
I was noticing in the minutes that you weren't going to be chairing, and I suppose that's, you weren't going to be chairing this meeting from the minutes of the last meeting.
No, I
guess
wasn't going to be chairing the, I wasn't going to be going to the board meeting
Oh, okay.
because I had a conflict.
Okay. I read it wrong then.
It might have been written wrong. All right, so we have those comments. Is there any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment for this item.
Any members of the public with their hands raised?
No members of the public with their hand raised.
All right, Mary?
So I move to accept the minutes as amended.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? And Jim, your hand is still up. I don't know if that's an error or if you have another comment. It's an error. All right, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. So motion to approve by member Sutter, seconded by member Hernandez. Will you please call a roll call vote?
Great, thank you. Member Landry. Member Landry?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Member Frank.
Abstain.
Member Lou.
Yes.
Member Swaminathan.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Lakshman.
Yes.
Member Talria. Member Pacheco.
Abstain.
Member Sutter.
Yes.
Member Hernandez.
Yes, thank you.
Member Lutz.
Yes.
Member Carr.
Yes.
Chair Eldridge.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, let's see if my video will hold up to this. If my voice gets funny, please tell me. I understand last time there were some issues with my headphones and people didn't tell me till the end of the meeting. So if I sound weird, let me know so I can fix it. Helpful. So the next agenda item is the chair report. I got some notes from Vice Chair Mutzenberg as he attended the EBCE board meeting in my stead. And so to report back on that, he said that the board of directors adopted the staff recommendation on the legislative update, choosing to adopt a support position for AB 2765. When he requested why members were in support of AB 2765, he did not receive an answer. The motion passed without any objection from the directors. The directors did take up the budget item And after a lengthy conversation, they seemed in support of the UCSF Bennyhop Hospital $15 million grant. And he made sure to report that the community innovation grants were a priority of the CAC and believes there may be some opportunity here for us to engage more deeply in that work. I'm also very, it's Mary's last meeting. And I can't even tell you, Mary, what a huge, like we love you, right? You're an amazing human being, and your contributions and everything that you have done for this body, not only as a chairperson, but just as a really engaged participant with this wonderful wealth of perspective, and the outside research that you've done is just absolutely phenomenal. And we'll get into that again later, but it is Mary Sutter's last meeting, and I will take every opportunity that I have to tell you what a force of nature you are and how deeply, deeply grateful I am that you have spent the last 4 years with us. I'm just so very honored, and quite pleased to report that member Jane Frank will be remaining with us, and how relieved I am that that is the case as well. And Mary, we do hope that you pop in on us every once in a while and give us some input when you feel like it, and so we can come back at the end and sort of circle back to that. But that is it's a big deal, and I wanted to before we go, I'll go around and tell you how much we love you, because I would like to do that at the end, but we really do, so we're going to keep peppering it through the meeting. I wanted to be responsive to a couple of the other items that members of this body have requested come up on agenda items. So we actually have JP here to talk about the metrics, the stipends, which is another thing a member has requested. And we had agendized the power label that Tom Kelly and Jane and other folks have been requesting us to talk about, and they were the various suggestions that we got was that it could be touched on in another agenda item or something like that. And I said that we needed to have a dedicated agenda item to talk about the power content label and what was going on, so people understood what was happening and could respond to their constituents around it. So that is being agendized, and I do want you to know that that is happening. So there is a list that we keep, an active list. We go over it every month. We're trying to plan out for 6 months and make sure that we're still able to be responsive to the items that come up on the board's agenda, and as well as the items that are being brought to us by members of this body and the community, so that we are in that process. And please don't think that it's disappeared. We still also have to work inside of staff capacity, which at the moment is pretty focused on the budget. So I want you to know that those things are there and they're held, and that we are working on getting them into agendas, and thought we had some for tonight, but they got shifted a little bit. So I just want you to know that. And as Member Sutter will be transitioning off of this body, Member Souza will be transitioning in as a full-time member, and we will be doing another recruitment, which means that if anyone knows folks in this area, please send them our way. And please send them our way. So I was hoping to have on this agenda as well an opportunity to talk through different ways that people wanted to participate, but we don't actually have time for that item that I wanted added to the agenda either. So we'll be doing something via email and just asking if people are interested in participating in like the selection committee for the community innovation grants and setting up the criterion for what those grants are going to look like and how we're going to evaluate them, to please email me and let me know. If there's other areas, Jim, I know that you had mentioned an area, so we're taking a look at that. Like, just let us know how you want to be involved, if you want to be. And if you don't have capacity beyond these meetings, that's okay. We don't have to put extra work on you. But if you are a person who is excited about doing something outside of this, do please let me know. So that is the extent of the chair report. Are there any questions or public comments on this item? Member Landry?
Yes, Chair Eldred, that last item that you just mentioned right now about participation in other committees, that's probably only 5 to 10 minutes. Can we move that to the, well, I guess we can make a request for further items at the end, but I would like to see us agendize that for the next meeting. Or,
I wanted it too, but it got bumped from this one. So we're working on it.
Okay, can it be next meeting? Can we?
I don't know that answer. We have to sit down with what comes up on the board's agenda, but it's a priority. Definitely a priority. We're working on it.
Okay.
Okay.
And we do have a public comment from Tom Kelly.
Oh, perfect. Tom?
Great. Thank you. Hold on one second. Tom Kelly, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you. And Olivia, I appreciate the fact that you've been trying to push staff to talk about the power content of Right Choice. But by pushing this over to some future meeting when the decision on the budget is going to take place on Wednesday, just reinforces my belief that EBCE staff are basically unhearing of the concerns of the public that feel that the content of Right Choice is abysmal. It is the worst of any CCA in Northern California, in spite of the fact that EBCE is reaping record profits. And even, in this upcoming budget, there's talk about improving the content, but it's incremental, it's small. And yet, you look around, fires all over the Southwest, fires all over Europe, no water. We're running out of water. And what does it all due to? Climate change, which EBCE has a role in causing. 300,000 metric tons of CO2 produced through the Right Choice product is, it's unwarranted. It's shocking when the other CCAs in the Bay Area are producing a default product that has 90% clean power, 100% clean power, and are doing fine financially, and they're getting their credit ratings, and they're hiring people, and they're keeping the customers. And EBCE, for whatever reason, continues to produce dirty power that not only worsens climate change, but also, as I mentioned earlier, makes things like respiratory illness that much worse for children, adults, in all the places where that electricity is produced. So I don't know, Anna Olivia, what is the answer here? Do we just put this off for another year and let things continue to worsen? Or do you actually stand up, all of you, and demand that EBCE do a better job? That's my question.
Thank you, Tom. I do encourage you, we are, as Nick Chasik could not be here tonight to discuss the budget, we have 2 different staff members that are here to address different portions of it. So that question likely can be addressed somewhat during that item. I just didn't want it to be swallowed or just touched on as part of another issue. I want us to be able to take a look at it and have a really direct and frank conversation about what's happening and make sure that folks understand what is there and that it has its proper time, that it is given enough time to have a real discussion and not folded into something else. So we do anticipate that to be at the next meeting. Again, several things from this meeting got pushed off to next meeting, so we will, but it is a priority, and it is a priority for us as well, and we hear you and thank you again for your advocacy. Are there any other members of the public with their hand raised, or have we received any written comment?
There are no further members with their hands raised, members of the public with their hands raised for this item.
Excellent. So we will move now on to item 5, which is a metrics review, and I
I have my hand raised.
Oh, sorry, Cynthia, I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah. I know we have a tight agenda. I realize that. I mean, our agendas are, you know, some agendas are more tight than others. But I think the discussion that that, you know, Tom Kelly wants to, you know, have us look into further, you know, what our energy portfolio is. I think that's very important. And I would like to actually support that request. I don't know now, is this coming up, this item, is this coming up in the June board meeting to vote on?
Cynthia, the power content labels are not exactly coming up in the June meeting. We are having we agree with you. This is an important thing. We need to have a discussion on it. So we're having it be an agenda item. The parts of it that are in the budget will be addressed in item 7 at this meeting. And then we will have a dedicated discussion on this topic, ideally at the next meeting. Again, several things that I thought were going to be at this meeting got pushed to next meeting. So we have to do a little bit of balancing as we need to stay within our 2-hour time frame. So, or at least try. So we can't discuss things not on the agenda. The place that we can discuss it is in the budget item, and it will have its own agenda item soon. So we have a very hefty agenda tonight, so I'd like to keep us on track for that because it will have its own item. Member Hernandez.
Just briefly, I know when I was on the board, we had 3 options, and right now we only have the renewable 100 and the bright choice. I think the website still says we have 3 options. They might want to look at that. I'm pretty sure it's only the 2 now. I allocated for the 3.
I really want to I'm so sorry to cut you off, Ed.
Oh,
I really want to shut down discussion on this topic since it is not agendized. And the part of this that we can talk about, we will be talking about during the budget item. And then that feedback though about it still says we have 3 on the website is really helpful. So
it's confusing, but thank you.
Adrian, if you could make note of that, that'd be really great. And then somebody else had their hand up.
Actually, it was me. I had a really, it's been bugging me. I just want to be able to look at it from an apples to apples comparison at some point. I know you just said that you wanted to talk about it. But I want to make sure that everybody's above board when they're doing the numbers.
Yes, absolutely. And that is part of why I want it to have its own agenda item so that we can discuss it. And there's an actual presentation with real facts as opposed to people just saying words without published documents backing up what they're saying. All right, so I'm going to move on to the metrics review. This was intended to be a full agenda item, but this is now going to have about 5 minutes, and JP can explain why that is. And thank you so much for being here. And I really like your video background.
It's where I want to be. Actually, that's untrue. I want to be right here where I am right now, speaking with all of you. So, hey folks, I'm JP Ross, Vice President of Local Development. And I did want to provide an update on the work we're doing with respect to metrics. My plan was to present at this meeting, this being Mary's last meeting. And Mary, thanks again so much for all your work with us. But I did want to provide some insight into what we are doing, what we have done, and looking at this going forward. So we're really looking at metrics in kind of from three different lenses, I guess. Not quite, but maybe become more clear as we talk about it. So with the local development business plan, we were provided a pretty substantial econometric model that could help us model the impacts of our work. And that would be kind of high level environmental and economic and job impacts to the community of our programs and products. And so one piece of the work that we're doing is updating that in-plan model so that we can provide feedback to the community and the board about the impacts of our programs. A second piece of work is our Salesforce implementation. So we've been investing heavily in Salesforce, which is a customer relationship management tool that will allow us to track program participation and activities at the customer and account level. So that's the second thing that we're doing, and I'll go into each of these a little more detail. And then the third thing is putting together a workshop for evaluating and putting together a framework for equity metrics that we want to build out with the community, because that wasn't really deliverable with the local development business plan. The local development business plan was much more about jobs, greenhouse gases and particulate emissions, and economic benefits to the community. And through the initiative of Chair Sutter and Vice Chair Frank a while ago, we said we need to do more. So I appreciate their leadership in bringing that and getting that going. So we wanted to develop, and my plan this month was to provide some feedback on how this work has been going. With the in-plan model, we have now gone back to one of the initial consultants and revised the in-plan model such that we can add our current programs and pieces of work into that model, because the original model didn't really have, it wasn't quite form fit to the programs we've actually launched. And so what we've been able to do now is add our local utility scale renewables projects, our resilient home and critical facilities, solar and storage programs, the EV charging program that we've launched, including the $14.5 million of state funding that we've brought into the county with that, our low moderate income electrification and heat pump water heater programs, as well as our proposed energy efficiency program. So that's actually working pretty well. We're still running it through the traces. And what kind of hitched me up for this meeting was we started to run our electrification programs in more detail. And what was coming out of that was actually lost revenue to EBCE. And when I dug deeper into the model, it actually became apparent that the first model that was delivered with the local development business plan, which proposed that EBCE should become a natural gas retailer in the community. That was one of the proposals. And so that natural gas retailing business was embedded pretty deep in the local development business plan. It didn't start coming out till we started running all of these scenarios. And I was like, there's no world in which us doing electrification should result in net revenue loss. Like, you run these things and you look at the results and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. And so we've kind of, that was when I emailed you, Anna Olivia, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. This thing just tripped me last week as I was going through that. So we're now looking to how we can pull that out of there, because we are not planning to become a natural gas retailer for a variety of reasons. So that was a little bit of unforeseen hitch. The second thing we're doing is Salesforce, which has been really exciting. We now have multiple programs in Salesforce where we have a website landing page where a customer comes in, they are able to input some information about themselves, their name, their address. we automatically match that customer to the relevant enrolled account in EBCE, and then are able to track them all the way through the program, including issuing customer satisfaction surveys at the end of their process. So an example of that is our induction cooktop lending program. Super exciting. We also have enabled Salesforce to provide a third-party portal where our providers, our contractors like Actera, can actually log in and manage customer interactions in our instance of Salesforce. And so we have some really cool dashboards that we've been able to pull together that we can use and that we can provide to our contractors to help them be super efficient. Another example of that is with our AMP, our CBO AMP outreach program. We've got 5 community-based organizations that are trying to enroll customers in the arrearage management plan. And we have a variety of tools so that they can evaluate customers, make sure they're eligible for the program, and then make sure that they've actually enrolled in the program. And this is stuff that we just haven't been able to do in the past. So building out these tools in Salesforce will really let us see who our programs are affecting and who is enrolling in our program. We also have some work on adding data to our backend systems with a diversity, equity, and inclusion mind. So one of the things we bought is buying some data around household level income and demographic data. So right now we're kind of, when we look at program enrollment, say we might look at a disadvantaged community or a low income community, but we know there's a variety of income levels within that community. And so that high level geographic boundary gives us some guidance in who's participating in our programs, but with, account level estimates of income level, how many people are living in a house, demographics, we can get a much better level of view on who's participating and benefiting from our program. So that's a lot of the work that we've been doing. Going forward, I'm happy to announce that one of the proposed staff for the budget this year is a reporting person who can help us do more of this work and translate more of this out to the community. And so, there's still lots of ongoing work on this. And then lastly is this goal of having a community workshop around formulating new equity related metrics. That has been on my plate for a while, and I apologize that I have not executed on that. I wanted to get a lot of these kind of views and visibility on what we have in the system and what we can add to the system, and then help formulate how we can turn that into additional metrics that we can measure. But that's an outstanding piece of work that I have on my plate. So that's a quick overview. We'll certainly provide more information at the next meeting, and appreciate the time, and Olivia, that you've given for me to talk about this briefly.
That is far more of a report. I thought we were going to get the "I'm so sorry, but I'll come back to you soon" report. So that's great. Mary, I definitely want you to talk on this. And then I'm going to encourage folks, because of our time, that we will hear this. There will be an actual presentation with things that you can see that the public will have had time to take a look at as well for our meeting. And so just know, I just wanted you to know that this work is going forward, even if it's not back to us in a form that we can really look at closely yet, but that is soon. And so look forward to that discussion at the next meeting, except for Mary. So go for it.
Oh, okay. I was going to do 2 quick things. First of all, appreciate all of the work, JP. I'm looking forward to being able to see something publicly, once I'm no longer involved in the background. So I was happy to hear that you are actually, going to be working on this. Somebody will be able to make some of this information public so people can go on and see really what's happening in these programs. I think that's great. The second thing I want to bring out is something that you may have been run across, but one of the things that I've more recently become aware of is the work that's happening at the CPUC around the affordability components. And there are certain census tracts that are in socioeconomic vulnerable areas and households who have a difficulty affording electric and or gas information. And through some of the work I've done, DAC is relatively limited in Alameda County. It's about 55,000 households. If you expand it to include what I'm calling DAC Plus, you add another about 105,000 households. And you might want to take a look at that to see if that's something that, given the DEI type of stuff that EBCE is involved in, that you want to actually start also including those census tracts. They're kind of contiguous to the DAC, but they're just kind of right outside of them. Thank you.
Please keep coming back and making comments.
Thanks, Mary. It's been great to work with you.
All right, so are there public comments on this item?
Yes, there.
Okay.
Yes,
great.
there is. Tom Kelly. To recognize Tom Kelly for 3 minutes.
Great.
Thank you, Adrian. So EBCE launched in 2018, and at the time, the county was underwriting the costs of all the work that was being done. And the county spent $500,000 on a local development business plan. And in that plan, there was a list of, frankly, I don't know how many items, but a significant number of things that EBCE could be doing to enhance the program, electrify, reduce GHGs, all that kind of thing. So JP, can you list for me, please, or for us, exactly what EBCE has achieved to date in relation to those recommendations from the business plan, please?
I would actually ask that be included in the reports, that when we have the actual agenda item and you have things published.
JP should know that. I mean, he's been working on this. He's the vice president of this thing, and he's been working on it for years. I mean, I hear this thing about the contract with Salesforce and all that kind of thing, and I'm sure there has to be some back office work done in order to make these programs work. But for example, JP, where is the feed-in tariff program? What's its status?
Hey, so I can definitely list off all the programs we've done. I am not going to list a differential of the specificity of what the local development business plan proposed we could do. We propose to the board each and every year what our planned budget and expense and programs are going to be, and the board approves that every year. So that's how we've gone forward with this, as opposed to taking the local development business plan as a de facto finished blueprint that we would then implement every single one of those.
Yeah,
we have responded to the times.
JP,
if you ask me a question, Tom, do you want me to answer it?
Yeah, I know you're not answering it. Just give me one example of what has been done from that business plan that's rolled out and working and has had results. That's all.
And Olivia, I'm going to ask us to actually allow Tom to finish up his comment for his 3 minutes, and then we're going to follow the agenda as we've clearly structured. This is not a one-on-one debate with Tom.
That is what I was about to recommend. Tom, you're very welcome to make your comment.
Thank you. So it's not a debate. We had a business plan that was offered to the community as a way of assuaging some concerns they had about the fact that there was no indication that EBCE would be doing anything locally. $500,000 was spent on that. And the promise was made to the community that some of these things would be rolled out. And to date, as far as I can tell, other than seeing a video on how to cook on an induction range, I haven't actually seen anything tangible come out of that. So I'm saying we spent money on that, $500,000. What have we achieved with it so far after almost 3.5 years?
Thank you for that comment. And JP, if you could look at addressing some of those questions in the presentation that happens, that would be appreciated.
Sure thing.
Are there other members of the public with their hands raised?
Yes, Jessica Tovar has her hand raised. I recognize her for 3 minutes.
Okay.
Jessica Tovar, East Bay Clean Power Alliance. I just wanted to make a couple comments related to this. The first one is around disadvantaged communities. So we are working with the city of Hayward on how to roll out electrification and energy efficiency principles around equity. And what we have learned is that cities like Hayward, and I've heard other cities within East Bay Community Energy Territory say this, that they don't qualify for disadvantaged communities, yet have low-income disadvantaged communities, environmental justice communities within their cities. This is a direct opportunity for East Bay Community Energy to fund those projects where these cities don't actually qualify for state and federal funding. So I wanted to uplift that because this is a great way for East Bay Community Energy to actually work for the communities that it serves. So the local development business plan has a lot of great information in it. It is a roadmap designed for East Bay Community Energy to roll out different programs. And there is still a lot more work to be done in doing so. When it comes to equity, our organization can help you connect with community organizations who have laid out all the ideas of what East Bay Community Energy and other community choice programs can do for their communities to be successful in this just transition. One of the reports that we also cited in our recent letter that we submitted to the board last week cites from the California Environmental Justice Alliance, building a just energy future, a framework for community choice aggregators to power equity and democracy in California. We have all the information that you need. We just need East Bay Community Energy to cooperate and work with the community and put the money where your marketing is to make sure that these programs are successful within East Bay territory. So I wanted to just highlight that because this is directly related. And if we want to be successful in uplifting communities that have been disinvested for so long, we need to be working together. Clean power to the people.
There are no further comments from the public.
All right. I see that member Landry has her hand raised, and just to, I know it's very annoying when I do this, but just to remind folks, we have a really heavy agenda. And this is a topic that we are going to have a full agenda item on. And so make your comments for sure, but we will be doing it. And thank you for the folks who have shared. This is really important feedback, and JP can take this and incorporate it into the presentation that he's going to be giving. Member Landry, was your hand accidentally up, or would you like to make your comments? Only because it's down now. I will see that that is down. All right, JP, you heard folks? All right, awesome. We can connect after this too. All right, so it was brought up that the board and CAC stipends are going to, I'm not sure if it's the board, I think it went to the finance committee. So we're going to hear an incredibly brief, I hope, presentation from staff on this item. But I want to give some context for the folks who haven't been here for a long time. When we originally started the Community Advisory Committee, it was incredibly important to us that we had representation from low-income community members, from members who experience energy insecurity, from members who are Care and Farah customers, this kinds of representation, because it's a voice that we don't always get to hear in our meetings. And part of that was setting up stipends, recognizing that it takes time to be here, and it often takes away resources. We have members who have to take vacation to attend our meetings, who regularly actually took vacation to attend meetings that are held in the middle of the daytime during regular work hours, people who work in the evenings who have to take not get paid for work in order to attend these meetings. And we have a hard time retaining those members. And therefore we have a hard time retaining their voices and their representation in the policies that we are making and advising on. And so we were asked at the beginning to recognize that we were an agency that hadn't yet started, that we had no budget, and that we didn't have any financial resources to support much. And so people who chose to take it and it was not required took a $50 a month, $50 a meeting stipend for participation. And back then it was quite common to have 2 meetings a month. Most months were 2 meetings, which meant the chair had 4 meetings a month, which is a lot of preparation, I gotta tell you. That was for the CAC. The board, I think, had double that. And we were asked to, which was actually quite contentious, because our participation is not less important than the board's participation. And we are supposed to be representing constituencies and then working on bringing their voices together and bringing that information to the board. And so the review of those stipends, as they've been the same for like 5 years, has come before the committee. I was not able to see the presentation. Another member of this body was able to see it and asked that we discuss it. And so I believe that the person giving this presentation is Jason, is that right?
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, cool. So if you could just do a really, I want folks to be able to have time to discuss and to remember who these stipends, who they're for. And I would also like to know approximately, like average, how many folks actually take them. Just percentage, not real numbers. So we have an idea of the impact. I don't know if you're allowed to share that though. So let me think about that before I actually make that request.
Yeah, I don't have actual data on that prepared, but I do know that participation is almost ubiquitous and universal. I know that there are some who, but I cannot, I do not know specifically, but I know that there are some checks that don't get cashed occasionally.
Okay, so most folks are participating in the program and some folks don't.
As far as I understand, every single person on the CAC committee has filed a W-9, and almost every single board member, including those that are reserve board members, have also filed W-9s.
So with filing a double W-9s, that's a required thing.
Tax status.
Yeah, they're required paperwork, and many of the folks can't take them because of conflict of interest stuff. So I know that there are folks who don't take them, and for years I did not either due to conflict of interest stuff. So,
as I said, I don't necessarily have the information available at this time.
It's good to know the participation level is high. That's all. So
it does seem high. And so with that, I can kind of go into what was presented at the FAP and kind of discuss, the kind of what came from that. If we could go to the next slide, please. Great. So EBCE provides stipends to both board members and CAC members. The stipend for the board member was established in the JPA in section 4.7, which allocated $100 per meeting attended, and may be adjusted for inflation, but has not at this point. The stipend for the CAC members was at the board's discretion in section 4.9 of the JPA. And in April of 2018, the board did pass a resolution allocating $50 per meeting to as Anna Olivia pointed out, to a maximum of 2 meetings per month for stipends, with the stipend for the chair to be equal to that of the directors. Next page, please. We then conducted a survey of all of the
Not
CCA.
equal, it's not equal to the directors, so we should clarify that.
Well, the resolution states that. I'm not sure what it says that it should be equal.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Anyway, we conducted a survey of other CCAs, and we found, and of the ones that we surveyed, there was only one that had a current stipend provided, and that was Orange County Power Authority, and they allowed up to 6 payments per month per meeting attended. Some did have, they had stipends before and have terminated. San Diego Clean Power is still determining whether or not they are going to have one. And as noted, Clean Power SF and San Jose Clean Energy are governed by the city or their respective governing board above them. And so as such, they're paid through that, not through the activities associated with the energy component. We did survey other agencies as well, including AC Transit, BART, SMUD, and Stop Waste, and they all had a variety of stipend programs as presented here. If we could go to the next slide, please. So we came up with some options that we proposed. One was to increase the stipend per meeting. For board directors, that would be a JPA amendment. The other option that we came up with was to adjust according to as written in the JPA, which allows us for CPI adjustments. And we would just need some guidance on what that CPI is and a resolution for the board to proceed with that. The other item that we proposed was to leave the stipends unchanged. If you could go to the next slide, please. And then we took basically the same approach to the CAC stipends as well, with the same 3 options. Now, after some deliberation between the board members or the members of the FAP committee, there came a proposal to basically increase according the middle one, which is basically increase according to the CPI, and to set a limit to the director's frequency of up to 4 per month, not just for board meeting attendances, but also for subcommittee attendances. And there is a provision for that. This is not in the presentation, but there is a provision for that in the JPA, and it's section 4.8, which allows the board to determine if reimbursements or stipends are allowed for subcommittees, boards, or other commissions. And so that is it. Thank you.
For clarification, the conversation at the financial meeting was to do the cost of living or inflation adjustment?
Correct.
Okay. So before we go to questions from our committee or comments from our committee, this is an action item. We are able to bring a recommendation to the board on this. And because it has not yet been voted on, is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, it will be going to this month's board meeting on Wednesday. Or I'm sorry, my mistake.
July. Yeah.
July. Yeah.
July. Okay, wonderful. So there's your framework. Have we received any comments on this item, or do any members of the public have their hands raised?
We have not received comments for this item, and there are no hands raised for this item.
Awesome. So I will look at comments from the CAC. Cynthia, this was your item that you requested brought to here. Would you like to make a comment on this item? Cynthia, go for it.
I do not see her on the panel. Is she still?
I do. She's got her hand raised too. She didn't move to the top of the queue like she normally does, but I see her hand raised.
I see.
Yep. Yeah, and I am here. Hopefully you can hear. So I just happened to listen in on the on this committee last Friday, and I listened to most of the presentation, and I was not, I mean, this item was agendized for that meeting, but I was not aware of, that this was a topic. So I asked that it come forward tonight so that the CAC members could also opine on their thoughts about the stipend. I do agree with Ann Olivia's early comments. If we have in-person board meetings, as an example, I generally get off work at 6 p.m. So I would be one of the persons that would certainly be willing to leave work earlier. And also, there is a lot of, preparation time. There are, technical aspects to this. And while none of us here do this for any type of economic gain, I do think the COLA stipend, I mean, if we did, I believe it's option 2, the COLA stipend, that would put us, that probably about, what is it, about $8 a month. The most, it might go from 50 to 58. And my opinion, I'm just one person, I think the stipend should be raised at least to $75, if not $100. But I think the simple COLA, since we haven't had any type of adjustment since 2018, is rather parsimonious. Given the breadth of our duties. So that's what I would like to say, and I may weigh in more after I hear what others have to say. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Cynthia. Joel?
Yes, I have a very basic question. So when we have designed the stipend originally, what's the purpose of this stipend? Is cover the basic cost like a mileage or driving from a home to the office, or what's the purpose?
So we didn't actually do any mileage or transportation inclusion, like none of that. We kind of intentionally didn't do that. The idea was that we would be moving around the county and meet in each of the different localities, ideally close to public transportation of some sort. But the idea was to, specifically with the CAC, was to make sure that folks who do not have a lot of economic resources and maybe work at different times had the ability to participate on an ongoing basis, and it didn't cost them or we would lose their voices. And that was very much the discussion. It was very frustrating on my end. And the chair at the time was Supervisor Hagerty. Supervisor Hagerty apologized over and over that the CAC was going to be starting at a lower rate than that of the board, but it was only because we had just started, and we literally were working off of a loan from the county. that we hadn't paid off yet. We didn't have any customers, we were just paying. And so, but we knew that we would not be able to attract and retain low income voices if we didn't provide subsidies, and subsidies are quite common on other boards. Whether or not they're common on other CACs, I have no idea. We're sort of inventing CAC as we go. But for other county boards, community advisory committees, policy committees, those kinds of things receive stipends. So that was the thing behind it, not mileage.
Thanks so much, Olivia. That's very helpful, and I understand better about the purpose. I think definitely we need many different voices. We definitely needed a voice from the group or communities where people don't have many means to get around, and we should cover the basic costs. And I think that also indirectly clear another question. So it's not for covering the time, it's more like covering the basic cost. So I think for stipend, as long as it cover the basic cost, like driving cost from one place to another within the EBC area, I would think that should be sufficient enough for that. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
So I have two thoughts, and they're in a little bit of opposition to each other. First of all, I do think that like the time and effort that the CAC members put into these meetings should be comparably recompensed as the board. Saying that, I know that we do try to limit our meetings to 2 hours. And I have been on board meetings as the CAC member on the board that go 5 hours. You know, so the timing that the directors spend is probably longer. So on some level, I'm not sure that half, but perhaps I think Cynthia put 75, that might be more comparable, because in the past, the CAC did have really long meetings, but we've been successful at keeping these to 2 hours or close to that for the past couple of years. So I'm not sure that on par cost is justified. I will also say that I think EBCE can really absorb the additional cost moving from 50 to 75 a meeting for CAC members, because the budget is showing that, you know, it's a minimal cost. That's my comments.
Thank you. Cynthia, I see your hand up again. Would
No.
Nope, okay. Would any other members like to make a comment before I make mine? Member Pacheco?
Sure, I don't have, sorry, my computer just froze. I don't have an opinion about what the increase should be, but I do think there should be a stipend. I'm lucky, I myself have a union construction job, and we have a lot of professionals on the CAC and obviously on the board. But for nonprofit community organizations, which I would like to see more members apply and get on the board, who are usually making minimum or a little above minimum, just having a minimal stipend actually helps. So I don't really have an opinion on how much it should be increased, but I just want to recognize that I believe it serves a purpose, and we should have it.
Thank you. Jim?
I'm sort of thinking the same as Ernie, that it does help in certain, you know, community organizations if they can get the funding to get their members on and get them on the board. I think also that it's important, even though as Cynthia said, many of us will do this. The money is not the reason we're doing it, but that the CCA spends the money on stipends for us is a sign that the CCA takes the advisory committee seriously and considers it important. So I think it should be raised. And that's it.
Thank you. Member Lou? I have to switch between first and last names. I'm terrible about that. Sorry.
Yeah, I just have a follow-up question. So considering the original purpose of a stipend, would a $50 per meeting still cover that well, or that probably not sufficient considering the high inflation and it has been changed for years? I would like to know what's the status right now.
So I'll tell you my opinion on this, and it's just an opinion. I think it's offensive that our voices are not valued at the same level as the board. I think that the amount of energy and work that we put into this, not only during these meetings, but outside of it, is substantial. Many of us also go to our own communities. We go to our unions. We go to our city council meetings. We meet with other members. Those meetings are not compensated. I spend an exorbitant amount of time, not every month, but quite a lot of months. I spend a lot of time outside of this body meeting with folks. And I know that we have not successfully retained our low-income members, many of our low-income members, because they couldn't afford the time off to come to these meetings. And so I really firmly believe that we need to be brought up to equity with the board. That if we actually want to attract and retain low-income members and advocates, that we need to make it worth their time to be here. And in a time when gas is $7 a gallon, it doesn't matter that we aren't driving for this job. People are having to just hustle more and more side jobs in order to be able to do basic things, and their ability to participate in things like civic engagement is decreased. So recognizing that and compensating that, I think, is, for me, it's a really high priority. And so I think that the original $50 was already accompanied by an apology that it was not the same as the board's, and an assurance that it would not stay that way. And so whatever happens with the board, I feel like we need to be brought with parity to them and not just say we're worth less. And that's my opinion. It's a strong one. But no, I don't think it's sufficient.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
It's just my opinion though. So Jim, you still have your hand up, or is it up again? Member Lutz? Nope. Okay.
I keep forgetting to lower my hand. I'm sorry.
It happens. Would somebody like to make a motion and we can vote on it?
Chair Eldred, if I could cut in first. We do have one member of the public who wishes to speak on this on this item.
Great.
Great. I'd like to recognize Jessica Tovar for 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you so much. Sorry, I think I hit the button just as you all were moving on to others, but I wanted to also encourage increasing the stipend of the community advisory committee members. And similarly, want to echo, certainly it's just a stipend. It's not any compensation for your time. But I do think that our advocacy around East Bay Community Energy was to have community in the governance. And what we got from that was a community advisory committee. And the intent was to have various stakeholders from the various communities within our community to be represented. And so, our situation, our economic situation is very different post-pandemic well, let's be honest, the pandemic continues. But realizing that, yes, everything is now more expensive. And I really do see valuing the time of community people and their input on a program is certainly really at the center of the success of East Bay Community Energy. So for that reason, I do encourage that the CAC stipend be raised, and if it could be raised at parity with the board members, even better. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public with their hand raised, or have we received any written comment on this item prior to 5 o'clock yesterday?
We have not received any written comment about this item, and there are no hands raised at this time.
Great. So Member Hernandez.
I will defer to Member Laundrie. Apologies.
Cynthia, do you have another comment?
I was going to make a motion in light of what I heard both from the public, your discussion, and Olivia, about the history of the stipend and the CAC members. So since I believe the Community Advisory Board while our function may be somewhat different because we're representing the community, but we are serving a vital role also in our capacity. I am going to recommend that that the CAC receives the consideration be brought forth to give the CAC members the same stipend has the board.
Is there a second to that motion?
Can we clarify if that's the $100 stipend, or unless it changes to 200 with the board, would we be the same?
Well, I'm willing to listen to a friendly amendment or other input, but I would, right now, I'm thinking yes. I don't know. I mean, it'll be brought to the board for further discussion. I'm sure there'll be staff input. There'll be Ann Olivia's input, so.
May I offer a friendly amendment? Cynthia?
Sure. Yeah.
The motion be that the CAC get brought up to the $100 stipend with an ask that staff and the board take a look at tying the CAC and the board stipends together so that they are at parity.
Sure. Okay.
So that way that we're not saying anything except take a look at that, and also bringing it up to the $100 level so that the whole thing isn't knocked down if the parity isn't accepted. Is that a friendly amendment?
Sure, I accept that. I don't
Great.
know if Member Hernandez has anything he wants to add or something we overlooked.
No, I just wanted to clarify, and I'm happy to second it.
Great. So is there a discussion on this item?
Could I just ask you to restate that? I just want to make sure I actually fully understood it.
Sure. That the CAC stipends get increased to $100 with consideration from the board and staff to
Parity.
achieving like stipend parity between the board and the CAC, but the motion is to raise it to $100 and then consider matching them together as so that the public voices are valued equally.
And when you say parity, do you mean because the board stipend may increase to call it $110 because of cost of living to actually raise it to $110, or
yes?
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to consider stipend parity for but to at least raise it to $100.
Okay.
Just clarify, you are saying increase the CAC stipend to $200 per meeting also?
No, to $100. The staff recommendation is to increase stipends to just by the COLA, right? Cost of living adjustment. So our motion that we have to vote on would be to raise the CAC stipends to $100 and to consider stipend parity between the board and the CAC. But our recommendation is to raise to $100 and then consider what parity would look like.
Overtime, probably. Is that? Yeah.
And so has the board stipend already been increased to $200? Not yet, right?
That's not.
Okay.
Just to be clear, the recommendation from the subcommittee was to increase the $100 stipend by the cost of living adjustment for the prior some years.
So that would be something more like $110.
Yeah.
As opposed to $200.
Yeah.
Right, depending upon guidance of what to use as CPI.
Right.
And so may I ask a clarifying question, Anna Olivia, real quick, Chair?
Mm-hmm.
Just so that I'm also certain in what the proposal is. So you're saying to increase the base rate before any COLA adjustments are made to the $100, and then to move in tandem with any adjustments made to the director?
To consider that option, we're asking them to consider it. We're asking the motion would be to raise it to $100 and then consider moving it in tandem.
I see. I understand. Thank you.
Member Pacheco?
So I think your last clarification kind of changed what I thought I was hearing. I thought that you were proposing originally parity with the board and then change that to consideration of parity with the board. But that last comment you just made was increase it and then parity of additional increase.
No, so my personal would be just match it to the board, whatever happens, just match it to the board. But the motion is that we raise it to $100 and that the board and staff consider moving to stipend parity between the board and the CAC. But the motion is to raise it to $100 and then consider what parity would look like.
So here's my response before we take the vote is I think it would just be simpler to ask for parity. You actually convinced me. I would be doing this with no stipend. I and others who are on the CAC and who are on this members of public have been working on this since 2007 or before. But we built into this, or we were trying to build into this, the fact that the community matters. And we are in part a voice of the community. And through the years, I do believe we fulfill a function and need to do so and need to continue to do so. So I don't know, if we're going to ask for parity, I say we just ask for parity. I don't know, I'm not offering that as a friendly amendment, but that's my feedback before the vote.
Jim?
After hearing all the discussion, I think I support Ernie's position on this. So, you know, the importance of making sure the community voice is taken seriously, and the simplicity that it's parity with the board members. And if it's per meeting, I assume the board members get the stipend for each of the meetings they go to. So, you know, if they go to a lot more meetings, they'll get more stipend. But the key message is the importance of the communications from the community.
Are there any folks who'd like to weigh in on this? Anyone else who'd like to weigh in on this?
Well, I would also, because I think the discussion is evolving, I would also like parity. And I think, you know, we should be clear. And I think we should just say parity with the board. Because the community is very important, so.
So Member Hernandez, would that be considered an amendment that you would support seconding?
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
okay. So Jim and Ernie, nope. Jim, is your hand still up or is it up again?
It's still up, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Member Swaminathan?
Yes, I had a clarifying question. Yes, we do represent the community, but isn't the board also representing the community? Aren't they from the community as well? So are we we are not the sole voice of the community, are we not?
So to answer that from the perspective, like the board is also from the community and they represent one perspective, which is that of elected officials from each of the communities, and they're on the JPA and they get to make those votes. And then the Community Advisory Committee was formed to have deeper discussions around some of the issues that are coming before them and allow a platform and an environment where people could actually get into deeper discussions, that we could get more voices than the group of people who are elected, so that we can bring folks in that don't normally get a seat at that table. So that when we say the community and the CAC, we're talking about this thing that was created, that was long fought for, to make sure that we have a table for all these different voices to come to, and that voice needs to be respected. That's my understanding. Also, 7:37, this meeting is gonna go late, y'all.
Okay.
So did that clarify your question?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Member Liu, and then I'm probably going to call the question.
Yes, so definitely CAC represents the community. I want to say the board director represents their community, plus they are making very important decisions. So we are an advisory board, as well as advisory committee. We don't make decisions, and they do make decisions, and their meetings are typically much longer. So I definitely prefer the difference. I don't see any issue. They have a higher stipend than what CAC committee has. So that's my opinion.
Okay, Member Hernandez?
Yeah, just given my experience as a former board member, I've had highly valuable insights, like from when Mary was the chair, to come over, provide the insights, so it gave us better perspective. Because sometimes you're dealing in the vacuum and some of the information so like complicated, at least for me it was. Really honored the perspective and the insights that this advisory committee brought forth. So in that, actually, I think this committee is actually more valuable than the board, because then you're dealing with the elected positions and the challenges there. But here you're more pure, you're able to really care about it, and not that the electeds don't. There's a different perspective there. So I think the value that this committee brings is huge as it relates to perspectives of the community and the effort to bring everybody from different perspectives that are not there to be elected, but really have the intent to see clean power, clean energy come to the people. And I would give a shout out to Jessica. She's always been there as well. I think it's valuable insights, and I think this committee brings a lot of good intel to make those perspectives valuable and hold a highly respect for everybody here. I'm just honored to be here now too. Thank you.
Coming from one of our founding board members, thanks. That means a lot. Member Lou, is your hand still raised or is it raised again? Nope. Okay, so I'm going to call the question to clarify. It sounds like the motion has shifted to the CAC recommending or asking the board for stipend parity with board stipend parity for all the reasons that were listed. And we will do a roll call vote.
Thank you. May I ask for just verification that the primary is Member Landry and the second is Member Hernandez?
That is correct.
Great, thank you. Member Landry?
Yes.
Member Frank?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Lou?
Abstain.
Member Swaminathan?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Lakshman?
Yes.
Member Taria? Member Pacheco?
Aye.
Member Sutter?
Yes.
Member Carr?
Yes.
Member Hernandez?
Yes, and just to make a note that you can always choose to not receive the stipend. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Member Lutz?
Yes.
And Chair Eldridge?
Yes,
The motion passes.
thank you. All right, y'all. That was the mute button. We have a very substantial item in front of us. It's, I was trying to push us to get here sooner. So I'd just like to do a quick check that folks are going to be able to remain on the line as we take a look at the budget as it is going to be, voted on. I have asked that the majority of the presentation be focused on the things that the CAC is most directly involved with. So that is the community development, the community innovation grants, the local development business plan, the $15 million grant to Children's, because we've had quite a lot of contact from the public about that grant. We also have Jason here to address some of the points around the energy and the energy mix and that portion of the budget. So if you could just use the raise hand feature, if you are able to stay past 8 o'clock, please, please do the raise hand feature so I can see you. 7, 8. All right, we will have quorum. Thank you so much for that. You can lower your hands or you will really confuse me soon. And we will have Jason and Alex go into their presentation.
I think Howard's gonna kick this one off for us.
Yeah, let me kick it off and then happy to hand it over to other folks. Maybe I can just start by asking, do you want us to walk through the full presentation? I think you kind of noted there the direction you want to go, but I want to ask explicitly. Do you want us to actually walk through it all, or do you want us to just more or less highlight the changes from the last presentation?
So this is the second time we're hearing this item, so only the changes, and except for those items, like we should have, what is it that we're voting on? So the changes are important, and then those community, the community development pieces, right? And the energy, like where the energy procurement, that kind of like what we're looking at for that. The things we get all the public comment on.
Okay, well, let me summarize the major changes, and then I'll certainly ask Alex and Jason to add in any additional areas to note, and then can turn it back to you and Olivia to see if you would like us to present any more specific to say local development, or if it's better to use the time with open questions and just addressing what you folks want to really focus on. So we can obviously, pivot and focus accordingly. So if we get to the presentation, Adrian, and you go to slide 3, this is the summary of the budget. One of the big things I wanted to note as a change is that the net position that you can see here right now notes a net increase in position of approximately $163 million. The first time that we made this presentation, or since the last time I made this presentation, this was around $230 million. There was a significant change about a week ago where PG&E filed their May ERA, which includes updated rates and updated PCIA. And based off of that forecast, that's what this adjustment accounts for. So rates were, according to PG&E, forecasted to come in lower with a slightly higher PCIA than what we had in our initial budget. I will note there's quite a bit of uncertainty as to what that will be, specifically in 2023. So it could be 160, it could be 230, it could be something different than that, and we'll show you some scenarios there. So clearly there can be some significant swings, which is largely based off of the significant volatility that we're seeing in the energy markets themselves. There is a little bit more deep dive that we're trying to do to really understand what's sort of behind PG&E's forecast itself, because a lot of that is unfortunately confidential, somewhat redacted. So we don't know every input that goes into their rate and PCI forecast. We have some reason to believe that it may have a lower energy forward forecast than what we think is reasonable, or at least I shouldn't say reasonable, but it differs from our forecast in our view of what we think energy prices will be in 2023 based off of certain market perspectives and such. So there is a good chance that number could be, quite a bit higher, but this is based off of the official filing that PG&E made about a week ago. So that's really the big bottom line sort of change of the budget. With that said, it doesn't materially change it's still a very strong budget. Obviously, it does not materially change what we are recommending in the various programs and value proposition changes that we have here. So, despite that, obviously, it's a healthy enough year that that we still have very strong results. I'm going to go forward on slide 5, if you can jump there. This is not necessarily a material change, but I do want to highlight it since it's come up topically today, is power content wise, just a really brief summary of what we're forecasting for 22 and 23. So recently there was a board adoption for a schedule for renewables procurement and carbon-free procurement through 2030. Given the strong budget year, we did increase the target numbers for 22 and 23 by 5%. So instead of 45% renewables, it goes up to 50% renewables, and overall carbon-free percentage is 68%. Then for 23, it goes from 49% to 54%, and overall carbon-free percentage 71%. So that is kind of the middle. It's not really a material update. This is consistent with what we previously showed, but that is, I think, an important highlight that that you wanted to cover. Slide 6, if you go to that real quick. Slide 6, again, this is the waterfall for the budget surplus. What we've recommended here is, obviously there are certain changes that are made in the base case, such as the increase in renewables procurement. There are also changes to the value proposition, taking the discount from 1% to 3%. And there is a CARE and FARA bill credit of $50. That is all in the base case. And then with that, we are still forecasting a surplus of about $160 million. And so with that $160 million, it would go through a waterfall of working capital allocation, of reserve account funding, and then a 50-50 split between incremental long-term renewable energy procurement and a one-time on-bill credit to customers. The only update I would make here is not to the waterfall itself, but obviously with the lower surplus, that number 3 split, those numbers go down a little bit, where previously it was closer to $100 million split between the two. It is now $40 million. And then if you can scroll to slide 8, Adrian. Slide 8 is a relatively new slide where we are laying out a number of different sort of budget scenarios. And this sort of encapsulates what we had previously seen of closer to $230 million in that position. And the current base case, MPB stands for market price benchmark, which is what has basically been filed by PG&E at this stage. That's what shows the current base case that we had that I just touched on earlier of about $163 million. And then we run a number of different sort of stress case scenarios. If prices go up, what happens? That's represented by the P95. Prices go down to the P5, what happens? And you can see in most, in the P95 and the P5 scenarios, the budget continues to remain strong, but obviously there is a fairly significant difference, about $240 million net position versus $140 million. And then the last three columns are somewhat more stress scenarios. So if there's a little bit of a mismatch between where rates are set and what energy prices actually are, then you can see that's where sort of the financials get a little bit more stressed. So if you assume a market price benchmark rate setting process, but a P50 in terms of cost curve, you have about $60 million for that position. And if you go to a more extreme scenario where you have really high energy prices, but the rates have not been properly set to forecast that, or not set to be assuming that same cost increase, then you can actually be in a scenario where you're losing money. We don't necessarily think we're going to experience that, but obviously these are all plausible risks. Those are really the big changes. The other highlight I wanted to make was just on the local development budget. There was a request by the board to increase the community grants from $3 million over 3 years. So we did reflect that change in here. And there were some relatively modest sort of overhead changes that we made as well. I think that generally covers the main highlights that I had. Alex, Jason, anything that I missed that you want to flag?
I think that covered everything. I was slightly preoccupied for a second, but did you mention the adjustment to local development?
I mentioned the adjustment to the community grants of $3 million. Okay, yeah, so perfect.
Good evening, everyone. I was hoping to address some of the public comment and criticism that's come up, but I did want to defer to Chair Aldred for a moment, given the time. I do believe that there have been some representatives from UCSF Benioff, Children's Hospital Oakland, patiently waiting to make public comment on this. So I don't want to speak when they've been waiting so long to do so. But I would like to address some of the criticism and public comments if now would be the appropriate time to do so.
So I'm not sure if you've been with us through previous budget stuff, but in general, we have staff lay out what the budget is, what's going on. We then go to public comment, and then we return to comments and questions from the board. We started this with the idea that it was much more of a dialogue, not a debate, not a fight, but much more of a dialogue with members of the community. So I really appreciate that you have some responses to folks. If what the staff would like to present has been demonstrated, I would ask that you hold those comments for a moment so that we can get the rest of public comment, and then we can try and address some of those things directly. And we do public comment before we do board or CAC comment and questions. So if it's part of the presentation, especially if it has been something that has come up in the past that you would like to address in anticipation of public comment, then make those statements now.
Okay. Well, thank you then, and then I'll certainly do that. I'll be as brief as I can. There are again, my name's Alex DeGiorgio, Public Engagement Manager for EBCE. Good evening, Chair Aldred, committee members, members of the public. I do just want to make there are three clarifying points I'd like to make. The first is on EBC's commitment to local development. The second would be UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital, Oakland, being a worthy recipient of grants of this kind, and the program itself being worthy of a grant from EBC for this. And then the third point being that establishing a local program to address the symptoms and causes of asthma affecting children in our service area is well within the original scope, purpose, and intent of EBCE. So to the first point, EBC's commitment to local development, I know this group knows it very well, and you've already heard from JP, but I do want to emphasize that there is a need to both address the symptoms and root cause of environmental injustice in this case. So we can do both, and we have to do both. So I want to lay out that our local development programs budget has been expanded to $40 million this year. So that would mean that, you know, over the course of the 3.5 to 4 years that EBC has been operational, that's about $40 million, and just for those local programs that our agency has made available, that are addressing, as others have pointed out, the root causes of air pollution from fossil fuel energy that's affecting our communities. Also, you know, through our power procurement as well, EBC is addressing the root causes of fossil fuel pollution to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Just one example that I know folks are familiar with, the Scott Hagerty Wind Energy Center, that's operational and located right in our service area. It represents an investment of more than $200 million over the course of the contract's term. It created 115,000 union labor hours. And then similar investments would be those in battery storage projects. EBC has invested in over 274 megawatts of battery storage. And as many here know, energy storage is critical for minimizing and hopefully eliminating the need for natural gas peaker plants that operate when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing. So those are just some examples of how EBC is addressing the root causes. Not to anyone's satisfaction, we're not satisfied with where we are. We intend to do more and are committed to doing more. But this kind of binary view that you either address the root causes or the symptoms of these problems just isn't something that we can really entertain. The second point, UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital is indeed a worthy recipient of these grant funds that are proposed. Children's Hospital Oakland serves tens of thousands of children in our community each year, many of whom qualify for Medi-Cal and live in frontline communities. As has been indicated in the previous presentations, almost 1 in 5 children in our service area suffers from asthma. More than that in some of the unincorporated communities like Ashland. And this is 33% above the state average. So this is a critical acute issue in our community, and UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital Oakland is in a position to help address that acute issue now. And then the last point, and I know that there's been a lot said about this, but EBCE's mission. So like other members of this committee and members of the public, I had the privilege of serving on the steering committee that formed EBCE's Joint Powers Agreement. So I speak from personal experience when I want to emphasize that this agency was formed to do far more than simply transact for wholesale energy supply and administer programs. Those two things are very important, but we of that steering committee intended for EBCE to advance sustainable development, equity, and environmental justice. And that's why the JPA uses very broad language to that effect. In the very first recital of the JPA, it uses the language including but not limited to the purchase of the power supply, aggregate electricity, et cetera. And in JPA section 2.4, under the purpose of the agency, is to exercise all other powers necessary and incidental to accomplishing the other energy related goals that we have. So I know there was a comment earlier by someone who said that they've been involved in EBCE longer than anyone here. I know that our chair, Eldred, and members Pacheco and Landry and myself were all there at the steering committee. So I just want to acknowledge that the scope of this agency is very broad and inclusive particularly when it comes to addressing environmental justice. Those are the 3 points I wanted to make. So I'll defer back to you, Chair Eldred.
Thank you. Just to get some clarifications, I always love when presentations are impassioned because it means a lot when people mean what they're talking about, and that's cool. For the budget discussion, I'm not sure if I heard 4 million or 40 million for local development.
40 over 4 years.
40 over 4 years, so 10 million. And how, and is that for all local development projects?
No, just under the local development department, depending on how you define local development. So that doesn't include procurement. That also doesn't include the leveraged money that we've garnered, such as the Cal EVIT program. 17.3 million was included in that for developing DC fast charging hubs.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so before we go into discussion, I have to stop hitting the mute button. I am sure that there are public comments that have been received on this item. And so if Adrian, you can call forth anyone who has submitted a comment card first, and then any members of the public with their hands raised second.
Yes, thank you very much. We received 2 written requests for public comment, Van Rainey and Amos White. I will recognize Van Rainey for 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to argue whether this is within the joint powers agreement. I have some questions about what Alex has already indicated as to whether it serves the basic purpose. But I think this particular grant for Benioff is maybe a worthy cause. But I think there are a lot of worthy causes that should be evaluated at the same time. So my suggestion is, let's say this is a grant opportunity and not a specific grant going to Benioff, and hold a public forum on what are the most beneficial ways of using this particular amount of money if EBCE is going to make it available. And so that's as simple as I can make it. I think there are a lot of worthy projects that can take advantage of the money that's available. And I think those are the things we should be discussing, and not simply saying yay or nay to one particular opportunity and offer. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm done.
Great. Hold on one second. Amos White. Amos White, I will recognize you for 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Amos White. I represent 100K Trees for Humanity. We are a Black-led urban reforestation nonprofit here in the East Bay. Our mission is to plant the planet one tree at a time. We submitted a request to present to the CAC, as we previously spoke to the EBCE board 1 month ago. We asked for your support to allocate, it was then at 100 million, 9% of that of the budget surplus to a program to cool our communities. The focus would be to be a mission aligned program that serves as a climate solution. We propose to plant trees at scale in 3 frontline communities, East Bay communities, as an environmental justice solution, as a climate investment for reduced greenhouse gas emissions, decrease energy costs, and increase customer savings. In so doing, this would lower tree canopy heat indexes, hot streets, and houses. And our East Bay community really does suffer from this, which drives up energy costs and threatens public safety and deteriorates public health. So in planting 100,000 trees in 3 targeted communities at scale, It would be a critical climate investment our communities both need and will reduce household energy consumption in upwards of $1.1 million in annual energy savings per year. Again, this is an investment with long-term returns. It is also an environmental justice program, if you will, in terms of the model that we're proposing to follow the 100K trees workforce development model in an investment of $9 million of EBC climate investment funds to plant 3 communities. Wanted to lastly say that we would ask for your consideration to, if you will, slow this process down. I agree with the former speaker and with a couple others, Ms. Tovar, in making this a public process so that the public can have greater input as to, one, access to these public funds, two, to assure that input is given as to the appropriateness of these funds to meet the needs that East Bay Community Energy is trying to satisfy within regards to environmental justice and in meeting its mission. If you would, we'd ask for that recommendation to go from this committee to the board, that there be an open and public process to reconsider how these funds are distributed within the community, but hopefully to make a climate impact. Thank you for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.
Before we move on, thank you for that comment. Can you just had a really eloquent request. Do you mind, can you type that into the chat or email that to Adrian so I can see the wording you actually just used?
Amos White, I'll reach out to you to receive your public comment. Or if you could include it on the website as a written public comment, that would be greatly appreciated. I see that Amos White's hand is up again. Would you like me to see if you would like to respond to our request?
Yes, not make another comment, but respond to that, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bankhead, and thank you, Chairman Eldred. If you'll please repeat it, I was listening to Mr. Eldred there and his instructions. What was the question again specifically?
Oh, I was just asking the
proposal?
Yeah, you had a very eloquently worded, it was like an elegantly worded proposal, and I was just wondering if there was a way I could look at that really quick. So email it to Adrian or something like that, just so I can see it.
Very good. 2 things. One, I did email it already to the clerk.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and hopefully that got distributed to you already. Elsewise, I'll resubmit it to the clerk so that you can see it in advance this time.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Recognize Vaughn for 3 minutes.
Yeah, mine's just a simple question. Which of these items, either on page 3 or 6 or 8 or whatever it is, indicates how much money you have to pay out to home solar providers? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Can someone please respond to that?
Yeah, so that is rolled up into the total energy cost.
Great. Okay, thank you. So we'll recognize Tom Kelly for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Adrian. So I'm going to say again, that I question the value of public input. If you take a look at the comments that were received on this item, you will see that the overwhelming majority of people were pushing for a better quality power content on Bright Choice, a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And Alex, I'll remind you that the JPA says that EBCE will beat PG&E on greenhouse gas emissions. although at this point, we're 3.5 times worse than PG&E. So, you know, I think there are some things that we could be doing that would address this issue of asthma and equity. And I'm just going to give you a list of things that I've written down, and I want to support Mr. White's comments. We should be developing greater urban forests, especially in our communities where it lacks trees and shrubs. There are places that are hotter than other parts of the Bay Area, where the air quality is worse because of the lack of trees. We could be putting money into Rising Sun for opportunity, getting into people's homes and helping them with energy efficiency and encouraging them to apply for CARE and FARE if they qualify. We could be providing each of the member jurisdictions with climate corps fellows who could help cities actually work on different projects within their cities on projects that align with EBCE. Recently, a Berkeley science teacher, a Berkeley elementary school teacher, was identified as one of Time Magazine's teachers that are working for the environment. She's developing these green pocket forests in local schools. She's got 3 of them in Berkeley schools now. We could be expanding that to all school districts throughout our jurisdictions. We could be providing induction ranges for low-income people so that they're not breathing air that has natural gas combusted gases in the homes that are triggers for asthma, not just for children, but for everyone who lives within that household. And as to the getting to 100% clean power, carbon-free power, I just did a quick calculation based on the numbers here in the report. And for $21 million, we could be providing 100% clean energy, carbon-free for everybody in EBCE jurisdiction. With $160 million to $200 million surplus, we could be doing that without any problem whatsoever. So what's holding us back? Thank you.
Thank you. We recognize Jessica Tovar for 3 minutes.
Jessica Tovar with the East Bay Clean Power Alliance, and I want to remind everybody that the local development plan was advocated for by the environmental justice movement, as well as the Alameda Labor Council. And the Board of Supervisors allocated $500,000 for the development of this roadmap for East Bay Community Energy to roll out different just transition projects within the East Bay. In addition, the California Environmental Justice Alliance published a report on building a just energy future, a framework for community choice aggregators to power equity and democracy in California. And that report was released last year. And in addition to that, I want to highlight what $15 million can fund. It could fund 395 low to moderate income electrification and energy efficiency programs, or subsidize the $60 that people have to pay more on their bill to participate in the program. We calculated that that could be 1,389 homes that could be included and don't have to bear the brunt of that bill increase and use their savings on their bill to pay for the retrofit. 15 million can also fund 60 community-based resilience hub microgrids of solar and battery storage. It could also fully subsidize 3,000 batteries for medical baseline customers, unlike the EBCE program, which folks had to pay $3,000 for a $5,000 battery. Other things that could be funded is a replacement of medium and heavy duty diesel fleets, and EBCE staff could figure out how much that would cost. Or we could be subsidizing a combination of the following suggestions for the community. These address root causes of asthma in environmental justice and frontline communities. I mentioned earlier about how many cities don't qualify as disadvantaged communities. This is where EBCE could supply gap funding to make sure that those communities can have access to equity in these programs. There are other programs in the East Bay as well that Bay Rent and Stop Waste are currently working on as well, and they could use the funding. UCSF in 2019 had $2.3 billion in assets, and in 2021 received $569 million in generous donations. Poor people, people of color, environmental justice communities don't have these resources needed to access clean energy programs and projects. EBCE has a responsibility to uphold its own commitments in its governing documents. Clean power to the people.
Thank you. There is no further public comment.
Thank you. I do want to make sure that everyone who gave comment submits it so we can get copies of those. This is a really important issue, and I'm going to be bringing this to the board on Wednesday. So if I can get a copy of that in my email, I would really appreciate it, Adrian.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, just because I really do try and summarize what is brought to folks. All right, so we will now go to questions and comments from the members of the CAC, and this is an action item. So at the end of this, we'll be looking for a recommendation as far as what we are bringing to the board. Ernie?
I actually have a lot of thoughts and comments about various parts of this issue. I'm going to put those aside for the moment and just say that I would support a motion that calls for what I basically understood community member White and community member Tovar advocating for, which goes along with what I was thinking myself, which is I would like to see the board put this line item, pull it from Wednesday's vote, and give, I'm not sure when the date is, 30 or 60 days that the final budget has to be done, but allow the community to provide input on how they would like to see this $15 million in grant monies be used, and then make a final decision in 30, 60 days. And I'll stop there.
Okay, so to recap, you're making a motion that this that the budget get voted on without the $15 million direct allocation, and that something like an RFP process goes out or something like that, and that can be addressed separately so it doesn't hold up the budget.
I'm not making a motion at this time because I'm guessing, I don't see any other hands up, but I was assuming that there's going to be other people that wanted to speak on this. So, but
okay, so you'll be
support that motion or make that motion later,
okay.
Unless the conversation convinces me otherwise.
Sorry, I just heard it as a motion. All right, Jim. Oh wait, Ernie, do you just want to start with that and we'll come back to you on other stuff?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Great. Jim?
I wanted to, well, there's two things. One is the way this proposal for funding Benioff was brought forward was not at all transparent, and it seemed like, you know, I'd like to give people credit for trying to do things the right way, but it seemed like people were hiding something, and maybe that's a bit harsh, but there was not much public discussion. There wasn't any public discussion before we saw it at the CAC last meeting. And so that's my biggest comment right now. And then the other comment is I noticed that investments, the incremental long-term clean energy storage, renewable energy investments, and on the one-time on-bill credits to customers had been decreased from about 50 million, if I remember what Howard said, to 20 million, which is a 60% decrease. But there wasn't any decrease in the amount that was being proposed for the Benioff grant. So that was just sort of puzzling, but I guess I do want to support the concept of since the budget has to be signed or voted on so soon, that this item be pulled from it, and a robust discussion with lots of community input be held on what to do with that $15 million. And so that's my comments.
Thank you, Jim. Mary?
So my comments are not on that. One of the asks that I heard was from one of the members of the public about the 100,000 trees program. And I support that type of program, but I want to say yes, and that if that program is put in place, I think it should be something that JP and his team consider, because these are not new programs. And it sounds wonderful to plant 100,000 trees. And there has been shown to be societal and energy benefits from trees in neighborhoods. I 100% agree with that. But they have to be planted in the right place. They have to be irrigated for several years to maintain, they have to grow. And I actually just had to take out, and they have to be the right tree to put in. And I'm not sure what kind of trees these are, but I had an arborist come to my house more recently, and I'm having to take out a tree because it was the wrong tree for the wrong place. So there's a couple things about this. Is the maintenance of these trees is not one and done. You have to maintain it. You have to make sure that people are watching out for it. And in a time of drought, water is expensive. So who's going to pay for the water on these things? And I think that it's something that these that the programs in EBCE may be able to support, but I think it needs a little bit more attention before a blanket yes on something like that. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Ed?
Yes, ma'am. I'll touch on the $15 million in a few seconds. I think on the budget-based case assumptions, I know that we're looking to do the price choice from 1% to 3% discount to PG&E, and the renewable 100 from 0.01 to 0.0075 above PG&E. I don't know the rationale for being above it, but if we could be more competitive, at least with residential and small commercial accounts, I wonder what that would look like for the overall budget. What would be the value, sort of headroom compression? Big words. I know I learned those from Howard and the rest of the team. So, so I wonder what that would look like, so that we are more competitive and bring down the cost just a bit for our residential and small commercial accounts. And we can leave the large commercial accounts alone and support that. So I just wonder what that would look like. And those would be my comments around that. I would be supportive of looking at a sort of a full, more robust dialogue around the $15 million, or maybe it's even more, to the community for programs. But I think, from my understanding, to be understood is, how do we end up with this proposal? What's the story? So that we're more, so East Bay Community Energy can be more transparent, understand there is value in supporting the hospital, having had my daughter this last weekend in the ER after, but she's fine. But you're just hoping for the best medical care anytime when your kids are at risk for anything. So for that, I would want to be supportive in helping improve health outcomes in our community. And I serve a different capacity with a special district to do that. So whatever which way we can do that, and more to help, intensify our community with more trees, either through that measure or other methods to reduce the cost of batteries. So supportive. So I think there needs to be more dialogue about how we spend any extra dollars that we may want to deploy to the community. I'd want to understand that better. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Souza?
Thank you. I too agree with Ms. Sutter that the tree proposal was a little bit, I think it's lacking a little information. There were some claims on savings as well that I would want to look at. Also, remember that trees can be the enemy of solar in communities. So we just kind of need to take a real good look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane?
Thank you. Yeah. I likewise have a lot, just like a lot of thoughts about this. I'll kind of keep it short because I know we're getting late here, but I think, you know, I think that the argument of, you know, kind of a broad gambit for the agency and, you know, which is inclusive of both, you know, environmental health outcomes and impacts, you know, I don't disagree with that, and I see the point there, but I just keep coming back to what's our core competency and, you know, what do we need to be focusing on as an agency, especially at this very young, you know, point in our tenure. You know, we've really only been around as an operational agency. You know, I joined 4 years ago, and I think it was really had just gotten off its feet. You know, I don't know how many years we were in then. It was just 1 or 2. You know, we're still, you know, we're still, I think, very early in the game here. And I see this kind of marquee philanthropic donation as being something that's an appropriate donation for an organization that's a bit farther down the line in our development, where we're still trying to, I think, demonstrate our value proposition to the community. And as we've heard here tonight, work through some pretty thorny issues around, you know, what our value proposition is, you know, how we deliver on that, how we ensure that our content label is meeting the expectations that we set out to meet. You know, and for those reasons, I just think right now we need to, if you know, if we do have extra money, we need to reinvest it in strengthening those core competencies, you know, in ways that were mentioned, for example, by Jessica Tovar. So, you know, that's kind of where I stand on this. You know, I think sticking to our mission of reducing GHG emissions is really where we should be focused right now, and strengthening our core, you know, our core value proposition with the community. And I think also just in response to what Ernie was saying, what Member Pacheco was saying, you know, if this is, you know, if we are going to enter, you know, kind of look at a grant of this size, a $15 million grant, which is a sizable grant, I think, for a public agency to make, then, you know, I think we need to look at, you know, is this part of our ongoing mission? Will we, you know, is this kind of philanthropic grant making or kind of community grant making around public health, is this going to be part of our ongoing mission? And if that's the case, how does it fit with our local development business plan, you know, goals that we've already kind of invested in and agreed on? And, you know, let's also have a discussion as a community about where that 15 million should go, and give, you know, other voices a chance to kind of weigh in as well. So yeah, thank you for your time. And I understand there's been a lot of effort on this. So I just want to appreciate also, you know, appreciate that effort. So thank you.
All right. Cynthia, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I agree with my colleagues' comments. I do believe that we need more robust public comment and dialogue regarding the 15 million in terms of where it should be placed. I know that Children's Hospital Benioff does great work, but I also want the community, the greater community, to have more robust input in where they want to see those dollars spent. And as a social worker, I always support better health outcomes. I'm also thinking about those diesel trucks going down 880 in our urban corridor. That certainly has impacts on asthma and other health issues and respiratory issues. I also, as Ed mentioned, I also would like to see if we can lower those rates to be more competitive, if a greater investment can be put there to have more parity with PG&E rates, especially that 3.5% raise that Tom Kelly was mentioning. And I certainly support more trees, but they apparently have to be the right trees in the right area. But I think trees are very important in an urban area, and support also the psychological well-being of the children and the constituents. So I support that, but I think we have some monies here that the public needs to opine in. Thank you.
All right. Member Pacheco, are you going to make your motion, or can I add my bits on this one?
Oh, please speak.
All right. So I used to work with nurses. I know I'm really familiar with children's and how important what they do is. And so I really want to send the feedback that no one has questioned children's being a really fantastic cause. No one wants kids to have asthma. No one questions any of those things. Children's is a great hospital. Many of my dear colleagues work there. Many of them work in children's cancer wards. My heart goes out and sympathies go out to our staff members whose family are served by that hospital. So I know, this is a personal thing for folks. But I also really want to recognize that $15 million is more than we are spending on local development this year. And this grant came up as a proposal direct to this institution, as opposed to through the kind of process that we make public organizations go through when they're asking for $25,000 or $40,000. Like, we make them submit proposals and compete against each other. And those proposals are shared and evaluated based on a set of criterion that we have agreed upon in advance. And it seems very strange to me that we would make organizations that have very small budgets go through that kind of process to receive these public funds, but not have somebody go through that process to receive more than our entire annual budget for local development. And at the last board meeting, one of the board members laid out how much their profits were, and I don't have those numbers in front of me right now, but it's like really big. It's really a lot. And while 15 million is a great contribution to a very, very worthy cause, it's not like its amount inside of something that big may not have the level of impact that some of these other things are, and it might. Like, I think that Children's Hospital should have the exact same chance as everyone else to be able to compete for these dollars, or to at least share their proposal and have the public weigh in on it in relationship to other programs that are laid out in the local development business plan or brought forth by community members like Amos, or like folks should know that there is something that they like, that they can turn in a request for $15 million. And I didn't see anything go out that said you can turn in a request for $15 million. So I think that process needs to happen. And I would, if a motion is made about pulling this and dealing with it separately when it has time to have its own kind of hearing, and that we can address the budget separate from that, then I would be in support of that. Those are my bits. Shiva?
Yeah, I'm torn on this. I see the value of it as well as I see the concerns. I would like to hear from staff your reaction to the skepticism expressed by this committee.
I'm happy to share some thoughts on that, and certainly, Alex or Jason, if you have anything to add, please chime in. I think I certainly appreciate the comments here. They're all said with thoughtfulness and appreciation for the organization and what we as an agency want to accomplish. It is a lot of money. And I think we all appreciate UCSF is a great organization doing great things. And I think the benefits of what this grant could provide, we think, are very significant and substantial. With that said, I take to heart some of the comments related to process and concerns around that. I think it's a balance from our perspective. On the one hand, with the budget surplus that we're seeing, we have increased fairly significantly the local development budget to over $20 million, which is the highest that it's ever been. And obviously we are increasing other various aspects of value proposition, renewables procurement in meaningful ways as well, that we felt that with such a strong year, having a balanced approach and putting money towards various areas was really important. And as a public health grant, this is one of the few ways that, yes, we want to address root cause issues with clean energy, but we felt that this is one of the most efficient ways to address some of the actual impacts and detrimental impacts of dirty fossil fuel pollution that we as an agency can quickly do. And so I think it's always a struggle and a balance between timing and efficiency to try to quickly make an impact and get dollars out the door in a strong budget year, with running longer and longer process and more thorough process. In this case, perhaps the discussion with the CAC itself, could have taken more meetings. With that said, the budget process, quite frankly, is always a very compressed process. It's always a very compressed time frame. We have to approve it before July 1 in order to start operating the year. And we have to wait some extent of time to actually have a reasonable forecast on what rates and PCI will be for the following year. And so unfortunately, we're sort of always crammed into this April through June timeframe where these decisions need to be quickly made. So I think it will always be a struggle from a timing perspective. How do we vet things more and more with the CAC and bring things forward more and more, because we're kind of time boxed in those 3 months. So I think I don't know if that answers your question generally.
May I ask a clarifier on it?
Mm-hmm.
So what I heard there, I understand not maybe having time to run everything through here, but did you go out and give other people the opportunity to, did you look at other options? Like was there any public announcement inside of our community that there would be a $15 million public health grant? And did you was there a selection process for why a public health grant as opposed, I'm a public health person, yeah. But was there a selection process for why public health grant as opposed to something else? And did you put out something that said other folks who are successful at dealing with things that affect public health, because we have a lot of them, that they had the opportunity to put forth a proposal that would use this $15 million.
So there, I'll say that I wasn't directly involved with all aspects of it, so I want to give an opportunity that make sure I go back and sort of and make sure this is a well-vetted response. But there was not a formal public competitive process, but certainly there was a process amongst the board members and staff to sort of have discussions with multiple entities and think about different avenues for how to address public health specifically, which was the goal here. In terms of a formal RFP process, no, there was not one.
Or even for public notification at all. I mean, if board members are involved, then at some point that should be a public process.
And again, I wasn't intimately involved with all those aspects. So, whether it was, when you say it's a public process, there's always an avenue for sort of communication and public dialogue, but it wasn't a formal competitive RFP process.
There was not a public announcement made that said there's this dollars, even if we didn't have an outlined RFP. There wasn't an announcement made that said, we're going to give somebody $15 million. What's your idea?
Yeah, I would want to go back and sort of confirm that, whether that was or not communicated, to be honest.
That would be helpful. Thank you. Member Pacheco.
Thank you. So when I said I have many comments and thoughts on this, I meant it, but I'm going to again hold off on those because I could speak for 10 minutes easily on this. And I will say, I guess, so both community member White and Jessica are putting forward possible alternatives that would fit under public health, or I'm not sure of the term of art, environmental health as well. And I would ask them both to send to the CAC and to the board some details about what they're proposing as an alternative to this $15 million. To this CAC, I guess I would like to make a proposal that we ask the board to, for the $15 million in public health grants, if that's what it's being line itemed as, that they simply go ahead and approve it as a public health grant, but any decision onto what program or project that grant would support be considered on at least the second meeting after this. I believe there's July, then I think we're off for August. So I think it would be September. And in the meantime, allow the community members to input their ideas and their thoughts on this. So with that, I guess I'll make a motion. If that was, I don't know if that was coherent enough, but if I need to clean that up, I can try to for a motion.
Can you work on typing it up? I think the intention behind it was clear. Do I hear a second?
I'll second. Cynthia Landry.
Excellent. So now we'll go to discussion on the topic. Member Letts, your hand is up. Is it on this? And if not, we'll come back to you for the next comment. Is it on this motion?
Yeah, I support the motion. And I also wanted to mention that there's research that shows converting gas stoves to electric can reduce the risk of children living in those houses getting asthma by 42%. And EBC is already doing an induction cooktop program. And we actually checked out one for rental for 2 weeks and enjoyed it, and are now considering how to get one that we can stop using our cooktop. So I think that is something EBCE is doing right now and has plenty of opportunity to ramp up, that has a major impact on reducing the risk of asthma. I mean, a 40% reduction in the risk of asthma is is pretty dramatic. So I guess I'm saying, yes, I support this motion.
Thank you, Member Sutter.
I'm sorry, can you actually say the motion again for me?
Do you want, so I was trying to clean it up right now as you asked. The CAC supports the board approving an environmental/public health grant of $15 million. The final consideration of what that program or programs are be moved to the September, to at least the September board meeting. I hadn't cleared up this, yeah.
So what I was hearing is that that $15 million grant be approved as a public health grant or an environmental health grant or however it's listed, but that it not be assigned to Children's Benioff yet, and that there is a period of time where a public process can happen where Children's Benioff can submit their proposal and other groups have the opportunity, if they can and have capacity and all those other things that we evaluate grants on, to turn in their proposals for the $15 million. And then the proposal can be the proposals can be evaluated and then selected like we do with the rest of the processes. That's what I heard. Is that right?
Yes, and just to be clear that there is some sort of public process. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Jim, do you have comment on this proposal? Or is your hand just still up?
I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to lower my hand. It's awkward.
All right.
Sorry.
Mary, did that answer your question? Yes, okay. Ed, and then I'm going to call the question because we have to still also vote on the rest of the budget.
Just not to change the motion, but just the staff, hopefully they can evaluate the options on the compression for residential and small commercial, sort of something that can be evaluated at the board. Not part of the motion, but maybe something they can look at and see if it's something they want to present or not. Thank you.
All right, so seeing no further discussion, I would request a roll call vote on, this is not to approve the rest of the budget. This is just on the $15 million grant, that it be approved as a public health grant, and that the award of that grant be moved back a couple months so there is an opportunity for a public and transparent selection process for that grant amount. All right.
Great, thank you. Who's a second for this, for Pacheco's proposal? Pacheco?
I was the second, but I was confused whether CAC member Hernandez wanted to include the priority with PG&E as part of Ernie's, Mr. Pacheco's motion or not.
I think that is something that is, well, might be addressed in the rest of the budget.
As I understand it now, that we're going to continue discussing the rest of the budget after this motion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the
I
clarification.
understand that. Thank you.
Great. So Pacheco and Landry second. Should I take roll call?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Member Landry.
Yes.
Member Frank.
Yes.
Member Lou.
Yes.
Member Swaminathan.
Yes.
Member Lakshman.
Yes. Yes.
Member Talria. Member Pacheco.
Yes.
Member Sutter.
Yes.
Member Carr.
Yes.
Member Hernandez.
Yes.
Member Lutz.
Aye.
Thank you. And Chair Eldridge.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. So now we'll go back. I know there were some hands raised to talk about the rest of the budget. Member Hernandez, would you like to make a comment on this, or is there other discussions about the rest of the budget?
That was my primary concern in regards to being more on parity to PG&E for residential and small commercial clients or accounts. I would like to see that they evaluate that as an option to the budget and see how it impacts it. So when they present it to the board, that's also an option they can consider in regards to the other recommendations by staff,
So,
excluding the grant.
so am I hearing that for the rest of the budget, the priority for the CAC and the public, as I'm hearing it, are carbon, is the renewable and the renewable energy content, the greenhouse gas emissions, not just carbon. I hate it when people just make it carbon. And the cost. Does that sound accurate? Like does that sound like the priorities that have been raised here? Am I missing a large one?
If I may, I'll concur. Sounds like the mix for the brilliant is it 100? There's concerns around what's in there. That 40% of unknown, right? Where you used to have another product in the middle that was cleaner. I think that went away. So I think there's a concern there how clean or dirty is our product mix, power label mix. I forget. Our
Right.
content.
And I am looking forward to that presentation because I think that at least when I was studying this, and it wasn't this year, so maybe it's shifted because everything has shifted in the last couple of years. But our asset controlling supplier was like 95% hydro stuff, so that was carbon free, just because of where it was coming from. But I don't know what it is now, and I haven't looked at either this or last year's numbers, frankly. So I am looking forward to that presentation. But really want to just make sure that I can sum up the priorities that we want these things looked at in the budget, and to see if there's ways to shift any of the items, even if it's over the course of the year, to get a local, renewable, lower greenhouse gas emissions, and with a focus as well on pricing and cost to our customers. Does that sound like an accurate summary?
Yes, to me. Thank you.
Are folks happy with that? I'm like, it's 8:51.
Yes.
Sadly, I can talk about this forever, but like, are folks in support of approving this budget with that exception that we had before, but ask that the staff keep a focus on those things? Or would you like to see, like, hey, we think you need to do more work on this budget because this thing isn't good enough, or like, we want to see some progress on this over the next year, and when you come back for our half year, we want to see what progress has been made in this area, how we've done better than your projections in this, or like, what do you guys want to see? Jim?
You were asking about a focus on these topics, and then you went to asking if there could be improvement on the topic. So I'd like some clarity that, yes, we approve, say something like, yes, we approve the budget as is, but we would really want to see improvements on A, local renewable energy content, B, greenhouse gas emission reductions in the Bright Choice offering, and C, better rates and prices to our customers. Is that what you're trying to say, or is it just that we were concerned about those things?
No, that was exactly right. And if you have those words written down, you should shoot them to me, because that was exactly what I was trying to say. You just did it really eloquently. I love elegant framing.
I was afraid you would do something like that.
Hey, we're a team, y'all. I got to get this stuff out to the board tonight. Come on. So if that is acceptable to folks, oh, Ed, go for it.
Just to clarify with the renewable 100, to be specific, I want to make sure we can look to be at parity with PG&E for those residential and small commercial accounts. We can, move that, or the renewable 100, it goes down to 0.0075 for the larger commercial accounts. I really want to see that. I think that's important to really look at it. Because on the staff recommendation, like page 74 of the packet, talks about the value proposition update. And I think that's really the focus. And that's the minor shift I like to see and what that looks like in the budget. And hopefully that's doable. And it shouldn't be a large jump based on the stats that they gave subsequently on page 75 of their packet. It might be, a couple dollars here and there, 2 or 3 or so adjustments, but it could add up. So just something to look at. But yeah, supportive of the budget overall.
I love that. Can you shoot me that wording too?
Sure.
Thank you. All right, so at this moment, I am looking for a motion. And what I had said was what it sounded like was a synthesis that was including the public's comments and the people who have spoken up. But if you are a person who has not yet spoken up or does not traditionally speak up and you have feelings on this, your voice is important here.
So should I try it?
Yes, you should.
So the CAC recommends budget approval with the value proposition updates, where we can look to reduce the cost to our customers and look to increase the product mix to less unidentified sources of power and more clean and renewable sources for the portfolio, where we would also recommend that residential and small commercial accounts for renewable 100 be on par with PG&E.
Do you mind if I play with the exact wording that we turn in, so long as it's got the right spirit?
Love it. Team
Great.
effort.
Thanks, Ed.
A pleasure.
Right. Is the motion clear to folks?
I'll second it, Cynthia Landry.
Great. Seeing no further discussion, we'd love to call a roll call vote.
Great, thank you very much. Member Landry.
Yes.
Member Frank.
Yes.
Member Lou.
Yes.
Member Swaminathan.
Yes.
Thank you. Member Lakshmi.
Yes.
Member Talaria. Member Pacheco.
Yes.
Member Sutter.
Yes.
Member Carr.
Yes.
Member Hernandez.
Yes.
Member Lutz.
Yes.
Chair Eldred.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
My unmute button has been very sticky tonight. So that brings us to the end of that. Oh, Member Swaminathan, did you have an addition?
Yeah, I would just had a clarification on the motion we just voted on. We are approving the budget, but we are asking staff to consider looking at these aspects, correct? So it's not a budget change. It just, we approve the budget with,
and bring forth these areas that we'd like them to look at with, some of these specific priorities. Yeah.
Okay.
If I may, we could only advise and recommend, not approve. So we're moving it forward to the board for their consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Excellent. All right, so we are going to move on to the next agenda item. I actually just lost the agenda, which is CAC member and staff amount announcements, including things that you'd like to see on future agendas. All the stuff you brought up on the past is, in fact, hopefully, on a list that we are trying to work in as quick as we can. I do have a small announcement here in that, as I mentioned last month, Reverend Chambers is going in for a transplant surgery on the 23rd of this month. There will be a card that's being circulated by Adrian. Thank you so much for all you do, Adrian. You're a rock star. Please take a moment and sign it. If you know anybody else who should, please have them do so, and send your prayers to both him and his family. He's getting a kidney donated by his daughter. And so there are 2 members of that family undertaking a pretty serious surgery, and any form of prayers or support would mean a lot to him, especially if he knew about it. So, and if there are other announcements, I want to close by having us all go around and talk about how awesome Mary is.
No,
you're
don't do
stunning.
that.
We love you so much.
No, but I do have an announcement.
Okay.
Okay, so first of all, I do want to say I have enjoyed my 4 years on the board tremendously. The one piece that I want to leave my fellow CAC members with is something that you may have heard from other folks, but during the couple years that I was actually chair and I brought information back to the directors, I found it most useful when I knew why people voted certain ways. And I also found it really useful to not necessarily always be unanimous. I mean, we're supposed to represent the community. The community doesn't agree on much in many areas. So I would support you all, at least, you know, bringing forward your position, voting no on something if you don't believe in it and you feel your constituents do not agree with that as well. But when you vote no, say why, because that information then can be taken back to the board of directors and help them decide how to actually vote on things that, you know, move forward within the organization. So I'm hoping that people will speak up and you know, as Ernie said, make trouble if need be, but do it obviously in a respectful way, but really talk, because that's the only way that this information moves forward. So that was just my one kind of rah-rah, and I will be looking at some of the agendas and hoping to see everything moving well. I will say, you know, in the 4 years, I have seen EBCE grow tremendously. There was uncertainty whether financially EBCE would actually work, whether or not it would remain. And I feel like the work that staff has done and the focus that they've had has really built a financially strong organization. It's young still, but you know, I think it's getting there. It'll take several more years of power purchases to be able, in my opinion, to see some of the to garner some of the savings that one can get after you make these really positive investments. Right now, we're still a bit at the whim of the market. So that was it. Thank you all and good luck with everything. And just to say, I mean, I'm moving on because I have a new grandchild coming. So I'm going to be grandma. That's what I'm going to go do.
Congrats, Mary. I just want to say how much I enjoyed serving as your vice chair and, you know, learned so much from you. So thank you for your service. And I look forward to being in touch with you in the future. So, and best of luck.
Thank you,
grandchild.
Thank you.
And I also, and I would like to say, Mary, that I've enjoyed you also. You're a great chair. You're a very steady chair. And I appreciate your inclusiveness and the way you structured our meeting. So I look forward to seeing you again soon, and have a great time with your granddaughter.
Grandson, thank you.
Grandson.
He's not here yet. He's coming soon.
Yes.
I don't want to pile on with too long of a speech, but Mary, I did want to thank you on behalf of staff. We've really enjoyed your expertise, your professionalism, your friendliness, and how you've engaged us month after month. So really appreciate that. Wish you the best with your grandkid.
And Mary, I just want to say thank you. Yeah, you know, I've learned to trust you, and sometimes you have a strong whip hand, but that's sometimes what's needed. And I appreciate it, even when you were disagreeing with me. You really are going to be missed. I appreciate you. Thank you.
And Mary, I want to say I'm very impressed by your deep knowledge, your experience, and you definitely demonstrate all your prior experience throughout so many meetings. I remember when we met the first time, I asked those questions why, and you explained that your long history serving in different committees, and you accumulated years of experience, and that's a very valuable asset for us. And I know we are losing that. It's a very hard to feel, and you will be missed for sure.
Jessica Tovar, can she be unmuted, please?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Sorry, I didn't know when I could go, but I wanted to also appreciate Mary. Mary came in with very unique experience, having worked at the Alameda Municipal Utility for various years. And I say very unique because a lot of us are new to this space and really learning as we go along. And just want to honor, I love the leadership of women in this space, because many of our voices are either new here or in the past had not been uplifted. And I want to appreciate your kind words of encouragement around continued energy democracy, because though we might have different opinions, different ideas, we are one voice of the community. So thank you very much.
Jim, your hand's still up. That might just be funny because you're just leave your hands up. But.
No, this time it isn't. It was intentional. And I wanted to say that even though my time on the committee didn't overlap much with Mary's, I wanted to appreciate her because it's obvious from the way the staff respects the CAC and takes advice from the CAC seriously. I mean, they don't always agree, but they do take the advice seriously. And I think a lot of that is due to your role as a chair of the CAC and the interactions you had with the staff and the board. So I do want to appreciate that, let you know I appreciate that, even though I didn't work with you for but a few months of those 4 years you served. So thank you.
Jim.
And I'm lowering my hand.
Ed?
For the time I served as a board member there in the dais, Mary was up there before Zoom, and I think she was basically a de facto board member. She carried the respect and honor of being out there with the rest of the folks up there trying to figure things out, figure out how this startup was going to power itself to where it's at today. I know I was gone for a little bit, and I was fortunate to be appointed and come back to the party. And I think it's great to have people like yourself, Mary, involved, committed to make it better for people like your grandson. He's never going to really see what you did, but knows their grandma did something great. Thank you for being great. And I think I would make a motion to nominate and sort of identify one of the wind turbines. We call it the Sutter turbine at the Hagerty farm. So let's find one and give her one.
That's hilarious. Awesome.
Thank you.
Adrian?
Great. No, thank you. I just want to thank you, Mary. You've been a role model, inspiration for the highest values of public service, and I just I've learned a lot from your example. So I just wanted to tell you thank you.
Mary, I'm not kidding when I say I love you. It has been it's been a long time. I have fiercely respect your leadership. It was a relief to be able to turn over the chair to someone who I trusted as I started law school. And I is one of the only times I didn't worry. And so, and thanks for all the meeting me at that really cool coffee shop in Hayward and like talking through things when I was trying to understand some of the more technical aspects of things. You were an incredible tutor and a wonderful leader, and really, really, truly deepest respect for all of time. And congrats to your family, man. That's really great.
Thank you.
So, with that, we will adjourn this meeting to July 18th at 6 p.m. if I'm remembering that correctly. And hopefully in that time we'll be welcoming Member Souza as a full member of the CAC. And remember that it's the diversity of voices, and that includes diversity of opinions and perspectives and ages and incomes and every other diversity factor that we can possibly get. So help recruit some folks to join us and to participate in these meetings, and have a wonderful night. And we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go Warriors.
Bye.